Good morning, everyone. My name is Ilona von Stein and I work with DANS in the Netherlands. I'm a work package lead in FAIRsFAIR around FAIR certification. And this morning, I would like to highlight another significant and promising focus in the FAIRsFAIR project, and that is FAIR assessment, metrics, and certification. To implement FAIR in the broad sense, there are many aspects that should come together to turn FAIR into a reality. A first thing one might think of are data objects. And indeed, I think, yes, FAIR data objects are critical. However, FAIR data can only exist in a FAIR ecosystem. In such an ecosystem, all components are needed to support FAIR. Because image always has the last word, I decided to include this picture here of the European Union Youth Orchestra. All those players work together and they are all truly essential. The notes in the music, they are one thing, but it's the players, the rhythm and the dynamics that collectively bring the music to life. And in line with this metaphor, we need the many components to make the FAIR symphony work. Therefore, the FAIRsFAIR approach to assessment and certification is based on the concept that data objects need to be considered into their context. Let's start with the data objects. FAIRsFAIR implemented 2 recommendations of the Turning FAIR into Reality report that relate to data objects. 1, we have developed assessment metrics for data objects, and 2, we have developed a FAIR data assessment tool to perform FAIR data assessments. In this presentation, I would like to talk you through both of them. This is the first one. Let me point out the FAIR data assessment metrics first. These metrics are core metrics to evaluate the fairness of objects within trustworthy repositories. Our metrics are based on prior global indicators and initiatives. And at the moment, they are still refined and revised. So you can still have your say in it. You're more than welcome to go to the link and have your say on these metrics. FAIRsFAIR developed the F-UJI tool, and this is our automated FAIR data assessment tool. It runs practical tests that are implemented against those metrics. And the tool supports the programmatic assessment for published data sets within repositories. It's available for testing. It's still work in progress, but it's already open source. And one thing which might be interesting to mention as well is that the tool adheres to existing web standards and external registries and resources. You can find the source code, by the way, on GitHub. I will show you the link later. On this slide, you see 2 versions of the F-UJI FAIR data assessment tool. On the left-hand side, you see a machine actionable version. And on the right-hand side, you see the graphical user interface that we are currently developing to allow also for a better human-friendly way of communicating the results and the communications. For both versions of the tool, it works really easy. You provide a valid persistent identifier or a URL of the dataset. F-UJI runs its tests and provides you an output, for example, on the left-hand side in JSON format with a lot of verbose debug messages and suggestions for improving data fairness. FAIR data assessment is a continuous process, and therefore we have integrated into the design of our F-UJI tool an iterative consultation process. We run this process with more than 5 repositories. You can see them at the bottom. And we test this, we test our tool with them. Not only we receive feedback from them on how we as a project can improve the F-UJI tool, but more important, also the tool provides them practical recommendations for FAIR data improvement. And with this, we provide practical guidance on how they can increase the level of the data fairness in their repositories. In the current EOSC and FAIR landscape, There are many initiatives and projects working around the topic of fair data assessment. And FAIRsFAIR is a frontrunner in aligning the variety of fair data assessments in Europe. For example, we have initiated a collaborative workshop resulting in an alignment report, and we were trying to find synergies there, avoid duplicate efforts, and focus on disciplinary practices. So let's move to the context of the data objects, which are data repositories. It's necessary for data objects to remain fair over time. Metrics and assessment tools often produce only a snapshot of fairness. And in order for data to remain fair over time, it's crucial to stress that the journey towards fair depends on where the dataset is preserved. There is a strong need for fair enabling trustworthy repositories. We need trustworthy repositories that can demonstrate that they enable and support the provision of fair data. This is also reflected in our FAIRsFAIR approach on TRUST+FAIR. In our project, we have a focus on both the repository perspective and the object perspective. For the repository assessment, the project is leveraging on Core Trust Seal certification, and we extend it with fair enabling characteristics. And for the object assessment, we work with our F-UJI approach I've just presented to you. Together, we unify the repository and object assessment in our focus on trust and fair. So trust for the repositories and fair for the data. And together with the right levels of preservation, curation, and data stewardship, this will lead to fair data over time. In our Core Trust Seal plus FAIR work, we engage with 10 selected data repositories in their preparations for the Core Trust Seal certification. At the same time, we learn from those repositories valuable lessons about their fair enabling practices. Their lessons will inform us as a project how we might better develop support and guidance towards certification and FAIR, also for a wider repository audience. Here you see some details of our repository support program. We've run a couple of workshops, both face-to-face when it was still possible, and also online. We provide practical tools and training material. An important aspect was also that we test peer-reviewed their Core Trust Seal applications, and we've provided a lot of one-on-one support and advice. Our experiences and lessons learned will also enable us to share recommendations for integrating FAIR into the Core Trust Seal repository requirements. Along the same lines, we are in the process of developing capability maturity models towards FAIR certification. Our capability maturity models will help repositories to define and achieve target levels and also goals and work on their continuous improvement. Our Core Trust Seal plus FAIR work will be of benefit to a wide variety of stakeholders. First and foremost, I think the researchers, because repositories can take the burden of individual researchers in making and keeping their data fair, but also, for example, the publishers and the funders, they will also benefit. And of course, the repository data services itself, because adhering to fairness standards and certification requirements will really improve their practices. We are now switching gears to another section in the FAIR symphony, that is research software. And the importance of research software is also recognized in the Turning FAIR into Reality report in recommendation 16 that calls for applying FAIR broadly, and it explicitly includes software. In order to analyze and formulate meaningful recommendations relating to fairness for software, it's important to recognize that software can play a number of possible roles. For example, it can be studied as a tool, as a research outcome, or as an object of study. And in our work, we focus on the last two. So on software as a research outcome, which in turn may also become the object of study itself. We focus on bridging between the research software community and the FAIR community at large. I won't go into the details, but if you're interested, I've provided here a link to an assessment report on the fairness of software. It provides an overview, a literature review, and 10 recommendations for the creation of FAIR guiding principles for research software. It's important to realize that this is not an end. Actually, our work already feeds into the RDA FAIR for Research Software Working Group. Moving on to my last section in the FAIR Symphony, I'd like to speak about how services might enable FAIR data. And also this work is clearly motivated by the vision of the Turning FAIR into Reality report. It clearly underlines the importance of services and infrastructure, which researchers need to effectively carry out their work. And there's also a growing awareness of that FAIR enabling services are also a driver and enabler for open science at large. However, there is for service owners currently little guidance on how to make their service fit in the FAIR data ecosystem. And this is what we've been doing in the FAIRsFAIR project. We are proposing a basic framework for FAIR service assessment. It contains guidance, recommendations, and best practices. The basic assessment framework contains high-level objectives, and for each objective, it contains detailed recommendations which are meant to be readily actionable for service owners. It is divided into 6 categories, 3 more technically oriented and 3 are more socially oriented. I would like to conclude with an outlook on next activities. Regarding the FAIR data object assessment, we will focus on testing, improving, and consulting on the metrics. We will keep improving and ultimately release the F-UJI tool, both the machine actionable version as well as the GUI version. Also, we will further liaise with other EOSC and FAIR initiatives on FAIR data testing. Regarding FAIR enabling repository certification, our focus will remain on TRUST+FAIR. We will keep on internal testing and also try to integrate with other ongoing initiatives. We will work on providing recommendations to integrate FAIR into Core Trust Seal requirements. We will do this together with the Core Trust Seal board. Also, we will keep supporting repositories, and we will provide guidance on their journey towards trust and FAIR. Regarding FAIR assessment for software and services, we will improve the basic assessment framework, and ultimately we will make it public. It will be in August 2021. I would like to thank you very much for your attention, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any.